Let's talk about education matters now, where the Ministry of Education says it will accommodate learners from schools that have shut permanently owing to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha says they will use a policy developed by the ministry to readmit candidates, which will consider, among others, their performance. This comes as at least 331 private schools have shut down permanently, affecting 55,000 learners. Caroline Kamau with the details of the preparations.
With just 48 hours left for schools to open their doors to learners after 9 months of closure, the Ministry of Education says it is working to ensure the safety of learners and teachers. Education CS Professor George Magoha spent New Year's at Babadoga Secondary School in Nairobi, assessing the delivery of desks. It is here that he sought to clarify the government's position on the fate of learners whose schools shut down permanently.
We shall admit those children to public schools. Now, being Kenyan, you may find that they are all heading to the top schools. The Ministry of Education has a policy which will follow how the children performed before and will place them in schools appropriate to where they should have been in the first place.
He revealed the ministry will follow guidelines for candidates affected with the permanent closure of schools.
We shall ensure that the government, together with the Kenya National Examination Council, shall advise as to where they will do their exams. For the examination classes that their schools are on, but sincerely they cannot afford the fees because they will have been admitted back as we have ordered, but they can't continue because they can't afford the fees. They voluntarily are required to come to public schools where they will finish, but because the exam has been printed with all the security details, when it comes to examination time, we shall make sure that they go to do their exams at the schools where they registered.
While admitting that social distancing would be a challenge given the big population of students in schools, Magoha said wearing of masks is mandatory.
I expect my teachers to be innovative according to the situation. There are many schools in the arid and semi-arid areas that shall achieve it because they don't have the numbers. Where the numbers are large, I expect, first of all the children to be masked. By being masked, I mean you cover both your nose and mouth 100% of the time.
At the same time, he challenged education stakeholders and Kenyans to be more optimistic about the reopening of schools. This comes as the government was challenged to give clarity on the measures in place to ensure safety of learners with special needs.
Schools that accommodate persons with disability, even in the graded form of schools. And they also need to adhere to the Ministry of Health protocols. But you can imagine a child with disability on a wheelchair and a person who will be pushing that child. What is the social distance in that particular scenario? You can imagine a child who is blind, yes, and is required to keep social distance while they may not be able to see even where they are traveling to.
Minister MP David Sankok took a swipe at the government over the lack of infrastructure for disabled persons in the wake of the pandemic.